I made a YouTube post a couple of weeks ago of my initial impressions of the blood build or the blood tree on the rapier, and that I felt it was very strong, and I had hesitations about using it and making videos about it and such, and kind of want to talk about that a little bit and kind of explain my thought process behind that YouTube post. The rapier in New World is a really strong weapon, arguably one of the best, and that's never been my argument when it comes to defending the weapon. From my point of view, someone who uses the rapier as my main weapon or my main source of damage in the builds that I use it in, my point of contention has always been, while the defensive aspects of the rapier, the mobility and the aspect of being able to escape fights better than any other weapon in the game, while being very good, consistently and effectively using the rapier as a offensive weapon and actually getting kills with it and getting success with it, in my opinion, isn't something that is as easy as using it as a defensive weapon and running away from fights. We're almost a year into the game, and as I've mentioned a couple of times, I've been using the rapier since beta, and it's genuinely my favorite weapon in the game. I really like swords and the playstyle that the rapier is based around. Now with that, being that the rapier has been pretty much since launch one of the best weapons, I've been having to essentially defend using the weapon for pretty much a year now, or my entire time playing the game. And when I started using the blood build and instantly saw how much more damage you had access to, the place where my mind initially went was thinking about having to defend the weapon even more. And I took a little bit of a break from the weapon in general, or even live. The PTS came out, so I've been on that a little bit, and I've been thinking about this weapon and the blooded setup and everything. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I don't really care. It's honestly not worth it. And you know, one of the things that I tried to one of the messages I guess I would try to relay on my channel a lot is to you know, play what you want, play what you enjoy, and to be fair, you know, on my side of it, I do get a little bit more I guess criticism, being the fact that I make YouTube videos for the game. But yeah, it's just not really worth it, and that's honestly probably going to be the most that I talk about what other people think, or the rumblings going on in the community about just things in general, because I have the way that I like to play the game, and that's what my channel is about. So yeah, last time we made a video about the blood tree, I mentioned, or we were playing the fire staff with that, but I mentioned how I also wanted to try a setup with the blunderbuss, and I think this is probably going to be the route that I end up going with this tree, because I feel the blunderbuss definitely synergizes with the blood tree a lot better than the fire staff does. The blood tree, as I mentioned, is very powerful and has access to a lot more burst damage than the grace tree, but that doesn't come at no cost. It doesn't have nearly as much, obviously, defensive capability and mobility as the grace tree does. And what that ends up forcing, or what ends up happening, is your optimal range, or the distances that you're able to play at, are pretty different than the grace tree, especially when you consider the grace tree combined with the fire staff. You can play at really far ranges with the fire staff, and then close the distance, and then put yourself into melee range with the grace tree. But with the blood tree, being that we don't have flesh, flesh was a big part of that being possible with the grace tree. And it's more of a kind of mid-range, as I mentioned, that this likes to play in. And the blunderbuss kind of just allows us to excel in that a lot more. The first setup that I ended up trying with it was actually Shrapnel Blast with Net Shot. It's the first time that I've ran a blunderbuss setup with more than 150 in either of its stats for it. So we essentially didn't have damage for it the last time I used it, and we were only using it as a utility weapon. So being that we have access to damage now, I wanted to see what it was like to just kind of blast people with the blunderbuss, and it feels really, really good. But in practice, when you start getting into more situations in open world or OPR, you start to feel the effects of not having access to flesh and just mobility in general. So I ended up switching out Shrapnel Blast for Claw Shot, which we're going to go over some commentary for that after this here. But the blood tree is just, honestly, it feels insane to use. To be able to go from almost full health on a target and off of a stagger finish them from 100 to 0, it just feels crazy. And that's the reason why I had apprehensions at first, but as I've been playing it more, it just takes some time to get used to. I feel it's not for free. You definitely will end up dying a lot more with the blood setup than you would with the grace tree, but you know, it's a fun build nonetheless. We're going to take a look at the build towards the end of the video, but I am running 250 int with this build, and we do have quite a bit of damage on the blunderbuss. But as I mentioned, when it came to more dynamic and like outnumbered situations, we needed more utility from the blunderbuss, so we ended up switching out Shrapnel Blast for Claw Shot, and we still have a ton of damage because of just other means through the blunderbuss, but it ended up allowing us to be able to have a similar amount of defensive capabilities that the grace tree did. But yeah, we have a 1v1 here with a blunderbuss and ice gauntlet user, and this is a really, really good fight to kind of show how you have to use the build. This is a setup our opponent is running that has a lot of zoning capability, and if we try to just go for a setup with flourish and finish, we can end up dying ourselves rather quickly because he's running a full in setup, so it has a lot more damage than we do on the blunderbuss. But you see, we're just kind of waiting out all of his abilities. After we get the ice shower and the ice storm out, we can stagger with the Tondo, cancel the Tondo into an evade into that flourish and finish, and yeah, it's lights out from there because it's just so much damage. The blunderbuss is a very, very interesting weapon, and as I mentioned, it pairs really well with the blood tree. I did drop 50 points of dex as I wanted to retain that 150 con, being that we had to go for 250 int, and in addition to the movement utility that you get from blunderbuss, all of those passives go really, really far when it comes to fighting for a long time solo on the build. On the roll, getting fortifies is insane, and it allows us to stay on the move while being able to apply pressure. You see, we ended up finishing off that first target there through his hatchet ultimate and finishing him off with the bleeds. We're left to the spear player here. We chunk him with the blunderbuss. He does end up landing the sweep. We just space ourselves out afterwards. And again, if you can land the initial stagger on flourish and you have bleed stacks on somebody, they're probably going to die. And we end up taking out the second spear player there. But we make our way over to the point a little bit, and there seems to be a little bit of a spawn wave, and we get quite a few enemies onto us here. So I'm going to go ahead and see which target I want to try to focus first. Usually I would try to go for the bow player, but this is a pretty different build than the grace tree. We can kind of just choose the target that's in front of us and just blow them up. So I end up going for the target that we just killed, being that we know his hatchet ultimate is down. We get a couple of bleed stacks, land the flourish, chunk him with it, and finish him off with a couple of evade attacks. And then we're left to the hammer player and the bow player here. A lot of people are running hatchet currently this patch, and it just makes fighting outnumbered that much harder because you have to end up killing somebody a second time because of the fact that they get that revived death or defied death. But we're trying to just avoid as many range abilities as we can, and we kind of just wait for that hammer player to jump back onto us. And again, you see we just land a couple of bleed stacks and absolutely poke him into the oblivion. And the thing about this setup is if you miss your abilities on your blunderbuss, it does make it a little bit difficult to follow up on targets who are trying to escape. You see we do end up proccing the hatchet ultimate, and I almost finish him off there, but he makes distance and I missed a couple of my abilities, and we almost go down to the bow player there. And we pretty much are not able to get our footing back after that happens. I'm not really able to heal back to full, and we again, each time this hammer player charges us again, you're able to almost finish him off. We get 2 more bleed stacks on him and we almost finish him off again towards the end there. But as I mentioned, you don't have the ability to fight as long as you do on the grace tree. So we eventually go down as I'm not able to finish off that hammer player. But a really fun fight. The little like mini game of setting up your bleed stacks for a finish on targets is actually really fun and refreshing because it's a pretty much completely different playstyle from the grace tree, and it's something that you have to be patient with. You can be aggressive to a point, but overextending yourself on this setup will oftentimes end up getting you killed. And we're going for a little bit of a ride here through the enemy base as we're chasing the enemy bow and rapier player here. But net shot is a extremely powerful ability, so it's only going to be a matter of time before we force this target to fight us here. But he does have 15 stacks of mortal empowerment right now, so I need to be careful because he's going to end up doing quite a bit of damage to us. But he ends up turning to us, and I immediately am just trying to watch out for those arrows as he's firing them, because everything he does right now is going to end up hurting quite a bit. We do a decent job of avoiding a couple of these bow shots, and I try to go in for a flourish there off of a single stack, but he does a good job of avoiding it. And I am pretty much cycling my blunderbuss abilities to buy myself time through his pressure. You see we land the blast shot there, and I go for a net shot to retreat, but range is not where I want to be at against a bow player with this many stacks of mortal empowerment, so I immediately dodge back and try to stay aggressive on him there. And we're consistently just applying these bleed stacks here. I'm trying to bait out his parry or just be aware for it before I go for a flourish there. But you see he commits to an attack, and knowing that once you're staggered you can't throw up anything to counter it, we see our opening there to land the combo and do a chunky amount of damage and finish him off there. Do a little bit of a lap, and we end up running back into the same player here. And knowing that we just got rid of all of those stacks of mortal empowerment, we have a little bit more freedom and leeway in this fight to play aggressive. So I'm just trying to see if I can dot him up a little bit, and he is playing a grace setup, so I know what to look out for here. We land the claw shot, send out a little buckshot to his legs there, and off of 2 stacks, we just find an opening for our flourish, land the stagger, going for the finish, and with just 2 stacks we do pretty much 7 to 8k damage. And yeah, it's a pretty insane setup for sure. But yeah, taking a look at the build, as I mentioned, we did end up dropping that 150 dex just to try to pump out as much damage as we could, being as we are running the full blood tree. But to make up for the fact that we have 1 less dodge, and that extra dodge is crucial, being that we are in light armor and we take a lot of damage from everything. We wanted to pair it with blunderbuss, and the blunderbuss just has a ton of overall utility. The containment tree overall is really nice ability wise and even damage wise. Claw shot is incredibly useful for closing the distance, putting out damage because you can do the claw shot cancel into another shot combo, which does a chunky amount of damage. It procs your ultimate here. Not only that, but when you're on the run and you need to buy time for a potion or something, in and out is a also incredibly useful passive. This does not stay when you swap weapons though, so you need to stay on your blunderbuss bar for to get the usage out of this. But yeah, just an incredible ability overall. Net shot as well. This is honestly when you look at all the things that this does, it is pretty ridiculous. So it does a decent amount of damage and slows them for 40%, but it is for 7 seconds. And sorry, it's actually a 50% slow once you get this passive, but it degrades to normal move speed over 7 seconds. And on top of that, we have exhausting nut shot, so they're also getting a decrease to stamina regeneration. This ability also moves you, so if you use this obviously while moving backwards, it can space you out from a lot of different abilities. So just 2 incredibly useful abilities. I didn't want to go for barb netting because we honestly don't need the additional damage over time. Flourish and Finish does not get increased damage from any other dots other than Tondo. So we don't really need any other damage over time outside of Tondo, and we can end up using this point for another passive because a lot of the passives here are pretty insane. But future endeavors, 1 less dodge, so anything that can just give us stamina is nice. Deep load and fortifying aggression is what we've gone for on the containment tree. But then taking a look at the chaos tree, on a roll is probably the most important passive here. Anytime you use an ability, you get a stacking fortify buff, which is, like I said, the probably best thing about this weapon or this tree. Future planning, anytime you use an ability, any one of our other abilities goes gets their cooldown reduced a little bit. This is also very useful. We are not running refreshing on the build, and all these abilities have pretty long cooldowns. 20 seconds for both of these, and then 30 seconds for blast shot. So I really like future planning here. Bite back, I needed to get this to get buckshot. Buckshot just makes us do a pretty ridiculous amount of damage when we end up landing claw shots, because you can claw shot somebody, which puts you in range, and then procs unload, and then if you're in because you landed that claw shot, your buckshot just makes that blast do so much damage. But blast shot is a really powerful defensive ability that we also picked up. And then last chance. But taking a look at our gear here, taking a look at the weapons first, we do have Deadly Flourish. I was using Vicious, but I like Keen on this setup actually better, because we just get more consistent damage overall for our abilities outside of Flourish and Finish. Flourish and Finish is non-crit damage, so Vicious is not really going to help us there, and Keen's not going to help that as either, but it does help out our light attack damage, our evade damage, and even the hit of Flourish and Finish themselves. Having those hits crit more often is increasing our damage overall. So Keen, Deadly Flourish, and I found one that had Shrieking Arcane, which is pretty nice. Shrieking Arcane procs off of Tondo as well, Tondo and Flourish, so pretty nice rapier. Got this out of a gypsum cast. Exhaustive net shot, excuse me, on a weapon is just absolutely insane. A 56% reduction on their stamina for 8 seconds means you can catch up to anybody. We have a lot of reduced mobility, as I mentioned, on this build when compared to the Grace Tree, but net shot and this perk here allows us to make up for that a lot. But taking a look at the gear, we have Keen Tondo, because I just like to have some damage or options outside of that burst combo. So Keen Tondo is going to burst or buff our light attack and evade damage. Shirking Fort on our chest piece. This is going to stack with on the roll from our blunderbuss tree, so we just have a pretty healthy amount of fortifies on this build. Omnidirectional evade. Shirking energy. As I mentioned, we have one less dodge, so having shirking energy is not going to fully make up for that, but it does help out quite a bit. Venturing claw shot. Going for that 2-hit combo, whether you're going for the light attack cancel with claw shot or you're just claw shotting in to shoot somebody, this provides a really nice amount of damage to that. Resilient, and then your third perk you can kind of just go for whatever. Champion's Emblem as well. That stamina recovery perk I really like to have, being that we are at 100 dex and not 150. And then Shirking of Power is also a nice perk to pair with that Flourish and Finish ability itself, just for the two hits of that. Hardy and Bloodletting, of course. Bloodletting in that 250 int is what is going to allow us to get to the most amount of damage on that blood setup. And then I've actually gone for a Nimble Ring. Again, I'm just trying to go for as many things to make up for not having that extra dodge. And after testing Nimble on my last build that I just made, the Spear and Void Gauntlet, I actually ended up liking this perk quite a bit, so we are running Nimble on this build. But yeah, that's the setup. I did forget to show the actual rapier tree as well. It is the same as we were running last time, but full grace tree, all the perks for that, swiftness, and then red curtains. We've also gone for refreshing strikes to pair with red curtains just to get some more cooldown reduction. Unerring, light edge. I preferred light edge over heavy puncture. I found you don't really need this, as Tondo has a really short cooldown, and with these two cooldown reduction perks you can get it up pretty quickly and have a fresh Tondo available to use before you want to flourish and finish. So I found just having more overall consistent damage for our light attack chain was more preferable for me, and then the full Tondo and flourish and finish. I am going to make a pretty lengthy and detailed build video for this, like I like to make for my other builds, but we're probably just going to take a little bit of a break just to actually play the game. I put a lot of time into the last build that I just put out, my Spear and Void Gauntlet one, so we're gonna probably be playing all of our builds here in the next little bit, as I kind of want to just get out of hyper focusing on a single build. But yeah, as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.